Hello, this is Mike Burek, your host and producer of Krynytsia, The Well, a podcast series about topics of interest to Ukrainians and friends of Ukraine around the world. Today is Tuesday, February 22nd, 2026. This episode is produced for The Ukrainian Weekly, a newspaper published in English for the global Ukrainian community since 1933. Our guests today are Olena Malytska and Alexander Romanishyn, both of whom are executives with the ISE Group NGO think tank. Welcome, Olena and Alexander. How are you?
Hi, Mike. Nice to meet you today. It will be a pleasure to speak about such a matter that with
Yeah.
the Ukrainian diaspora.
Hi,
Alex?
Mike. Yeah, great to meet you as well.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. To start off with, can both of you give us some information about your professional career? Olena, maybe we can start with you.
Yeah, with pleasure. So I'm CEO. I'm running ISE Group. ISE Group is a corporate accelerator and think tank, which actually produces the study that we are going to discuss today. ISE stands for innovation, I innovation as startup, E entrepreneurship. And actually, we are performing globally. We present in Ukraine, but also in Europe and in States. And my professional background is mostly finance and investment. I was a CFO for many international businesses before I started this business. And looking at the world, I've seen how digital economy emerged, and that's how the idea of a think tank that measures digital and innovation came up to me, as well as the idea to support international businesses, especially in innovation. So that's the little story about ISE Group and its emerging as innovation and accelerator and digital think tank.
Alexander, how about you?
Yeah, actually, my background is blended. So I work both in public policy and private finance. So, and in the government, I served in different roles. And one of the roles was a deputy minister of economy of Ukraine. Later on, when the war started, I joined the cabinet of minister in the reform office, so to working on innovation policy, on recovery agenda. And in private sector, I spent over 15 years in corporate finance and M&A and strategic investment advisory with EY, with several investment holdings. So, and combinations of both this experience brings me to think tank, where I can realize my knowledge how government works, and I love data. So, and I implement data data-driven data-driven policy and evidence policy.
Olena, you already gave us a thumbnail sketch of the ISE Group. When was it established and why? And also, who is the audience for its services?
ISE Group was established in Kyiv in 2018 and as accelerators. First, we start as accelerator, and our audience are innovators and entrepreneurs who need some business support. But later on, we understood that the expertise that we are gaining in ISE Group is also useful for policymakers because we understand what is needed to be done if we speak about regulation of digital world and innovation and how we can support it. When the war broke up, we also started work in Europe, in Poland, and we established in Poland as well. And later on, we went to DC. So now we are present in those locations, and everywhere we work as accelerator and as think tank. And since then, we were recognized by Financial Times as one of the most active Eastern European accelerators, and we top ranked in overall European ranking. And mostly audience are smart people. I would say it's everyone, like our startups, innovators, businessmen, policymakers, everyone who connected with innovation and digital world.
And how does ISE Group differ from other think tanks in Ukraine?
Alexander, will you pick it the question? Or
I can continue. Yeah, so as Elena mentioned, so we cover different countries. So we work transatlantic, and we present in three regions like Europe, the US, and Ukraine. And we focus on business from one side, and from another side, we are on the daily basis understand the technology and their needs. So, and this is how we are different because we get the ideas about our next policy papers or studies based on real needs from the businesses. And it's not like about the theory. So it's from market and from the trend. And actually, think tank and accelerator is a unique combination, like of the arms that develops innovation businesses, like one arm, and the second arm, we analyze, measure, and do advice on policy development. So we work in both sectors.
Please describe the relationship with the Ukrainian-American Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Where is the headquarters for the chamber, and what services does it provide?
When we launched the project to study Ukrainian-American business and their impact on the US economy, we started to engage with the local partners in different states, and most of them business associations, business clubs, etc. And Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Ukrainian-American Chamber of Commerce and Industry, was one of the first organizations which joined our efforts with the study. And they contribute to the study by engaging businesses. So they distributed survey. They help us with collecting data about Ukrainian-American businesses in the United States. And when we finalized the study, we did together the first ever Ukrainian-American business event in Chicago. So around 70 persons arrived, and it was events which combined political level, diplomatic level, and business level. So it was really, really exciting. And now many people ask about the next edition of the study and the next edition of this gathering.
So let's turn to the study. The ISE Group released a study in the fall of 2025 entitled Economic Impact of Ukrainian-American Businesses in the U.S., and it was released through its UA to USA platform. What is that platform, and why was it set up? And why was the Ukrainian-American business study done, and when and how was the data compiled for it?
So let's start from the study. The Ukrainian presence isn't new in the United States, and you and all our listeners, they know that actually Ukrainian presence maybe start from the beginning of last centuries. There were several waves of Ukrainians who had to immigrate to the United States. We split them into 5 groups of Ukrainians who immigrated due to different reasons. And Ukrainians always have been visible, culturally, intellectually. It's not a simple people. Most of them, they have a decent or inspiring intellectual background. And we know that actually Ukraine used to have great engineering schools and so on. So Ukrainians were visible, but not measurable. And we, in conversation, come up to the idea that it's time to measure the impact of those diasporas to US economy. We wanted to see how Ukrainians contributed. And the goal was to quantify the impact, to estimate Ukrainians as economic force. That's the main idea. And actually, Alexander, he came up with the idea and the framework how to measure it. And actually, what began just like attempt or like just idea to gather statistics come up into national study. We will come up a little bit more about numbers. So basically, the study is evidence-based. We contacted as many businesses as we could, about 2,000 businesses, and try to gather and measure the impact, how they do it. So this is evidence-based study on some statistics. And actually, we don't want it to be just a study. That's why we came up with UA to SA platform. And Alexander can take a little bit from here and tell more about platform itself.
Yes, thank you, Lena. And it's a really good question, Michael, because it's a really interesting story. So maybe I make one step back and say what is inspired me to create the study. So during Ukrainian week, the last year, I was in Ukrainian week and I had conversation with many people about how we can advocate Ukrainian issue in the United States. And there's many pro and cons, how it's successful or not successful. And later, during this week, I met a friend from the State Department and I asked him honestly, so listen, could you tell me how we can build Ukrainian advocacy more stronger in the United States? And he told me, so listen, Alex, Ukrainian has a great culture, delicious foods, the great music, but we don't see you here. And I asked him back, what does it mean you don't see us here? Well, look, we don't see how much investment Ukrainian businesses did here, how many jobs created, how much taxes paid. So we don't know data, no policy. Okay. And I said, challenge accepted. Let's meet in 6 months. So, and actually, after this conversation, as Elena mentioned, we start to develop the study, and not only the study, and study is the first pillar of the platform. So the study is about evidence. The next pillar is business engagement. So the study identifies these people. Business engagement is important to distribute these numbers and to use these numbers for some actions. So, and we can do this through business communities, business clubs in different states. And it works in both ways, to collect the data and to share, aggregate results with the community. So we get the data and back to community the result, aggregated result. And the third pillar is the most important, it's action. And we call the platform UA to USA, from evidence to action. Action about getting access to finance, getting access to procurement programs, making policy actions like Ukrainian Adjustment Act or other issues which is important for businesses in the United States. So this is kind of very comprehensive platform which cover all the 3 pillars.
According to the study, Ukrainian American companies generate nearly 60 billion in annual revenue and support about 300,000 US jobs. How was this conclusion reached? And can you give me very briefly some of the key highlights from the study?
So basically, we quantified all the businesses that we could reach. So maybe the number even more. And we've seen the industry where they are, what is the amount of people engaged. So basically, name by name, we done questionnaire. It's evidence-based. Based on real data, we quantified how much businesses create, how much working places created, and approximated what is payroll in the industry, what are taxes in the industry, and how they can be multiplied to get the idea. The methodology is described thoroughly in the study, and I think it could be even more precise if we could reach more Ukrainians and get more data. But even those numbers are very exciting to see, to measure economic footprint of Ukrainian American entrepreneurship in the United States. Alex, anything to add?
I can add, so besides Pink, we also did analysis of challenges and plans of Ukrainian American businesses there. So, and we measured how successful businesses was their plan in terms of investment, in terms of job creations. And it's really interesting for policymakers to understand what is bottlenecks, what are challenges for businesses in the specific state, so they can use this data and to change something in the policy. Because the question was about employment, about visa issues, about technology disruptions, about operational bottlenecks, so variety of questions. And it was divided by the size of companies and by industries and by states. So it's very interesting to take numbers from some industry or some size of businesses and to develop tailored policy for those or that or states.
Unfortunately, we're just about out of time, but I do have a final question. Are there plans to promote the study in the US and elsewhere? And if so, where and when?
Yes, of course, we want to raise awareness about this study, both in Ukraine and US. For Ukrainians who are in Ukraine to understand the partnership opportunities, for Ukrainians who in US to understand the background and the overall capacity of the diaspora. And for Americans, again, to appreciate the impact of Ukrainians and to build stronger ties together with Ukrainians. So the study will be promoted in Harvard, actually this Friday. Alexander will present together with our mentors, will present the study in Boston, in Harvard Kennedy School. And later in April, study will be presented again in Capitol Hill during the IMF week spring meetings. And also we want to present it in May in Select USA. But also there will be a series of events in Ukraine.
Alexander, we'll give you the final word. Anything to add?
Yeah, and it's not the final destination. So now we are thinking about the second edition of the study and to introduce barometer, which I mentioned, to trace the year-over-year changes and how comfortable to measure business climate of Ukrainian American businesses. And we also think, in fact, it would be great to show other diaspora's contributions into the US economy. For instance, Latin America, India, from other countries. So I think it would be really great because methodology is really unique and it's really interesting to make this impact measure.
Olena and Alexander, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Michael, for your really, really interesting questions and for this conversation.
It was a pleasure.
I have been speaking with Olena Malytska, who is the CEO of the ISE Group, and board member Alexander Romanishyn, talking about the group and its recent study on Ukrainian-American businesses in the U.S. This episode of Krynytsia was produced for The Ukrainian Weekly, a newspaper published in English for the global Ukrainian community since 1933. And I'm Mike Burek, the host and producer of Krynytsia. Until next time, that's all for now.